Hey, good morning. How's everyone doing? Week before Easter. Whee! What was that? You guys are all excited. Now you're not. It's Easter weekend next week, guys. It's going to be great. Really pumped about it. It's going to be so good. Really glad to have you all here today. My name is Drake. I am the pastor here, and it's an honor and a joy to have you gathering with us today in person and online. Before we get into the message today, we're starting a brand new series called Wonderful, Controversial Jesus, and we'll get into that in a moment. But before we get into that, just a couple of quick notes. We started City Church 7 years ago with a very specific mission, and that was to help people find their way to God from where they are, which assumes that we're not waiting for people to come to us, but just like Jesus, we want to meet people where they are, to step out of our comfort zones and engage. So when we talk about the Easter block party and things like that, I want you to see, maybe it might be nuanced for you, but the block party is on a Saturday, and that's on purpose, so that we can go out and serve our community and meet them where they are without any strings attached. It's not come to service and then a surprise egg hunt afterward, we held you hostage until then, or any of that stuff, right? It's just generosity in the city with our time and our energy and resources to say, hey, we're here for you. And we want to represent God's love well. And so then when you join in, when you come and volunteer, and you give your time and your energy alongside us to serve others, not only does that empower you in building community, when there's something special about like serving shoulder to shoulder with somebody, would you agree? It's a unique kind of community that happens there. And so no matter where you are, even if you're new to City Church, we would love to have you jump in and volunteer with us in serving and making a difference. But in addition to that, it is to very simply demonstrate in a very small way the love of God on top of the proclamation of the love of God. And so it's making sure that our lives and our words match up. Does it make sense? Friday night, our Good Friday service is unique. It's not primarily a teaching space, but a focus of prayer and worship. And so it's a really beautiful service that really we only do once a year. And so I'd encourage you to make some time to come and prioritize the space of reflection and prayer as we go through the events of Easter weekend. But our mission, again, is to help people find their way to God from where they are. We do that. We carry that out by practicing the way of Jesus together in Boulder. And so what that means is through our weekends and our groups, we take everything that we're working on, apprentice our lives under Jesus, our King, our Lord, our Rabbi, our Savior, our friend, and we put those things into practice, which is easier said than done sometimes. Would you agree? And so we need each other in the process. It's one thing to sit under a good teaching, which hopefully that happens today. It's one thing for that to happen. It's another thing to take that teaching and then put it into practice. And so my hope for you today is that no matter where you're walking in on your spiritual journey, that you feel loved, you feel safe, you feel welcome here in this community, that it would be like experientially true for you today. And if you're a part of this church family, if City Church is your home, then you would recognize that this is your family, this is your mission. We carry this together, and these things become experientially true as we do this together for those in the room. So really glad to have you. And again, as a reminder, our weekends are not like all the eggs in the basket, no pun intended there. Easter. That was funny, guys. Like weekends are like the huddle, if you will, right? And then you and I live elsewhere Monday through Saturday, and we have lives that we live. And so we are partnering, engaging with God in the world around us, confident that He is working and He has a desire to work in and through us. So, everybody doing okay? All right, so now we are entering into this series. But before I do that, I have one quick announcement for you just so you can mark your calendars. We start tomorrow a rhythm of fasting and prayer. You guys have that slide for me? Thank you. 5-day rhythm of fasting and prayer. If you need it, you can always go back on our YouTube channel and our podcast and pick up the past teachings. I did a teaching on fasting just like a month ago. So if you need like some more concrete help just in the practice of fasting itself, you can just hop on there and grab that teaching. But very simply, this is giving up food or other things to create a hunger in our lives. The rhythm I would encourage is like a Monday or Wednesday and Friday, kind of going into Good Friday, where you maybe don't eat for sun up to sundown or 24 hours or whatever is helpful and permissible for you. But by giving up food, we create hunger in our bodies, and we then point that hunger toward God. We're not impressing God. We don't get gold stars for fasting, right? It's just you and I live busy and distracted lives. Would you agree? Right? Half of you just looked up from your phones and you're like, wait, what are we talking about? Right? Exactly. So the idea is, because we live such busy and distracted lives, it's really easy for a lot of life to happen to us, and then we roll into Good Friday not having given God and His work and attention and desire and direction for our lives much thought, right? Have you ever been there? It's pretty easy to do. No rocks to throw at all, myself included. And so the practice of fasting creates hunger that interrupts our normal grind and rhythms and habits. And so then when I feel like hunger pain, if you will, or if I'm like, abstaining from social media or something, some of those knee jerks that I normally go to when I feel that hunger, then I take that moment to remind myself, oh, wow, God, I really want to turn my hunger towards you. More than anything else, I'm hungering after you. God, I want more of your presence, more of your way, more of your life, more of your spirit working in and through me. Right? That's the practice of fasting. It's to get our attention, to make room in our lives for God. Are you okay? And as a result of that, as we make room in our lives for God, we also make room in our lives for God's heart for others. So we're partnering with him over this week of, God, what are you up to in the city? What are you up to in my friend circles where I live, work, and play? And how do I partner with you? Whether it's through a simple invite to Good Friday or Easter Sunday or the block party, or just sharing my story or loving someone in radical generosity. God, how do I partner with what you're up to in the world around me? Make sense? Okay, so mark your calendar, starts tomorrow all the way through Good Friday, okay? In 1820, Thomas Jefferson took a pair of scissors and a couple of New Testaments, and he cut out all of the pieces that he liked and made his own Bible. You guys heard of this? You didn't know that? True story, bro. True story. Thomas Jefferson made his own Bible, basically removing all of the miraculous, like basically anything he didn't like. He just took all the pieces he did like, cut it out with a razor blade and pair of scissors, and put together. This is in, I think it's the Smithsonian Museum. You can go look at it. Like his built Bible, like took everything he didn't like about Jesus out and then put together all of the things he considered valuable from the way of Jesus. Pretty wild, right? A little bold, right? I know that not everybody agrees that like the Bible's holy or whatever, and so you don't maybe have reverence for the book, but like, I don't know if you can cut up any book, So kind of extreme, but listen, you've got to admit, to Jefferson's credit, it's a struggle to follow Jesus sometimes. Would you agree? Like Jesus is wonderful, and he's controversial. And so I think a lot of people like Jefferson, they love ideas about Jesus. There's parts of Jesus they find incredible and compelling. And then there's other parts of Jesus that are repulsive and frustrating and difficult. And one of the conversations I think Jefferson was wrestling with, and that you and I wrestle with often, is how do we take this wonderful, controversial Jesus that we see on the pages of the New Testament scripture, who's the culmination of the entire Old Testament leading up to this point. He's the Messiah, the promised one. Everything in the Old Testament has been about him leading up to this point in time. How do you take that Jesus off of the dirt streets of Galilee and then carry him into your Monday in Boulder, Colorado? Do you feel that tension sometimes? As we start the series, I don't know anybody personally who's ever taken a pair of scissors and cut up a Bible. I did hear one story. There's a guy named Zane Black. He was like one of the guys that we worked with in youth. And he was given a Bible, and he was a snowboarder and big into weed and all that stuff. And he ran out of paper to roll his weed. And so this is a true story, and somebody gave him a Bible, and a New Testament, and they said, here's the deal. You can have this Bible, but you have to promise to read every page before you smoke it. And so he's like, deal. He takes, this is true. You can add message Zane Black. He takes the Bible, and then sure enough, he honors the commitment. He reads every page before he smokes it. And then he tells his story. He's like, I smoked Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then John smoked me. That's his, I kid you not. Anyway, so as we start this series today, I wonder how many of us maybe don't take real scissors to the Bible, but functionally, in our minds and in our hearts, we have cut out many sections in the scriptures. Many areas that we'd like to avoid, many areas we'd like not to apply, many areas where we want to make Jesus fit into our own mold. Maybe we've never taken a real pair of scissors, but I wonder functionally just in our day-to-day lives as we try to apprentice and follow Jesus, as we call him Lord and Savior, I just wonder functionally how many of us have taken a pair of scissors in our hearts and minds and cut out this piece and that piece I don't like. And yeah, Jesus, but about this. And hey, you can touch this, but not over here. Tim Keller says that if your God never disagrees with you, you might just be worshiping an idealized version of yourself. I think that's a helpful premise to the series that we're in today. So we are starting today, this new series, wonderful, controversial Jesus. And I'll kind of give you the outline. 3 years ago or so, give or take, I was considering doing a series like this because we live in a very pluralistic society. We live in one of the most unchurched cities in America, and people have lots of questions about the hard stuff when it comes to following Jesus. And we've never been a church afraid of hard questions, but we do want to be a church full of compassion and conviction. And so trying to hold those tensions together and teach well and follow Jesus well and love well. And so about 3 years ago, I had this thought of having a series like this we were going to do. And I talked to a couple people in our church, and most of the people, when I started to bring up some of the topics that we would talk about, their eyes got real big. And I remember multiple people counseled me. They're like, Drake, I don't know, man. You got a really good thing going here. And, that parking lot's going to get real empty real quick. You start one of those series like that. And with good intentions, they were like, hey, these very nuanced conversations, like you have to do this really well, and sat on it and ended up not doing it. And this last fall, we were at our leadership retreat. And again, not out of fear, but just out of wisdom, just felt like not the right time. And so this last fall, we were with our leadership retreat talking over, hey, God, what do you have for us this next year as a church, 7 years into this thing? And this thought came up again. And so naturally, I asked no one this time and just pulled the trigger. Okay, that's a joke. I asked plenty of people, but here we are. So Easter is next week. And we will talk about the resurrection of Jesus. It's going to be beautiful and compelling. It will be a day wired for those that are wrestling with who Jesus is and can I believe in this? And is Jesus reliable and trustworthy, and poking holes, all that stuff. So it's a great day to bring your non-Christian friends, absolutely. And it's a great day to come and worship because Jesus is alive back from the grave, right? It's going to be good. All right, so that's Easter next week. Today, I am just doing an intro that I believe will set the tone for the entire series. And quite frankly, friends, if we don't get today, the rest of the series can be a train wreck. And I mean that in a very wide scope, that in our hearts, in our minds, it could not accomplish what I think it's intended to accomplish. So lean in today for the intro. Then, after Easter, let me just tell you where we're going, okay? We're going to deal with the exclusivity of Jesus. We did a survey across our church, anyone in our data system. We were like, yo, what are the hard topics that you have questions about, both for yourself and for others? And all kinds of stuff came in. So just remember that this entire series is your fault, okay? When we get into it, this is not my idea. You asked for it, so don't be mad. But you better be here, okay? Because I'm going to have a stomach ulcer by the end of it, okay? It's going to be a lot. Now, week 1, the exclusivity of Jesus, his claims, like Jesus being the only way, stuff like that. How does that work out? Week 2, evil and suffering. Week 3, judgment and hell. Week 4, Old Testament violence. Week 5, Jesus and sexuality. Then the week after, Jesus and singleness. The week after that, Jesus and the gay community. The week after that, Jesus and gender. The week after that, Jesus and money. The week after that, Jesus and politics. Does that sound fun? And maybe some others, like who knows? Honestly, I'm kind of clearing my calendar just to see what God is up to, but those are the ones that made the top of the list so far, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun, yeah? Do you guys feel the tension? Anybody get like a little bit uncomfortable just as I read that list? You're like, can you please pray? Can we worship now? All right. Listen. Most people, probably you included, aren't waking up thinking about this stuff. This is not like top of the list. Now, some people are, for what it's worth. These are like really important, like life-defining conversations for them. But most people are not waking up thinking about all of this stuff. Most people are not, like just the culture moment we live in, they're not contemplating the deep questions of life. They're like, yo, it's just been a hard week and I just need a good weekend. Like that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I'm talking about? You feel that? Now, obviously you show up so I can kind of make you care about it. So there we are, right? There we are. But if we're being honest, this is not like what I wake up every morning thinking about, and the same is probably true for you. It might not dominate, these conversations might not dominate the narrative of your life, but they do influence dramatically how you live your life. In the place that you live, work, and play, in the place that you call home, in this cultural moment. And I want you to know that Jesus cares a lot about both of those spaces. How you live, where you live, how you engage. So I'm at a kid's birthday party a couple of years ago. With my children, by the way, not just by myself, randomly. With my children. And you know, you always like, you meet parents and hello and whatever. And so we're like there and the kids are doing the party and hello, my name's Drake. Hey, and they, hey, what do you do for work? And we're talking. Oh, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a pastor here in Boulder. Me and my wife, we started a church. Oh, really? So right out of the gate, what do you believe about homosexuality? Got my little paper plate with ice cream and cake on it. All right, let's just go there while we're. Yeah. That's awesome. That happened, and it's happened many times. Not just that conversation, by the way. All kinds of fun stuff. At the Rayback Collective, someone came up to me and said, "Oh, how do you explain Jesus or God? This God of love wiping out an entire nation in the Old Testament?" I'm like, "Can I buy you a drink?" Sounds like a great conversation. Let's have it. So, do you guys feel the pressure? It's a lot. And listen, I think for a lot of people who are following Jesus, like your desire is to be bold. Your desire is, man, Jesus has flipped your life upside down from the inside out. But there's so much pressure and like nuance and how do I? And so then, you're hanging out and then someone's like, hey, tell me about this. And you're just holding your cake and ice cream. You're like, my pastor's doing this cool series you should come to and talk about, right? Like how do we navigate these conversations? Here's the deal. Listen, the desire is to equip you well to navigate all of life. Not to bring your friends to church. Like, what if your friends never want to come to church? That's okay. Because Jesus' primary strategy for his love invading the world around us, his grace and his forgiveness invading the world around us is not how many people you bring to church, but how you bring Jesus to them. And so the desire is to equip you to think well for yourself, but then to equip you to love well in the world around you. But it's hard. And so I think there's a continuum, kind of two extremes that people fall into as we get into this series. Some people lean into like the extreme of fear in response to these conversations, and then some people lean into the extreme like version of compromise. Fear, where you've got your values, you've got your beliefs, you've got things that you're holding on to, and so then you kind of go into self-preservation mode, right? The culture around you, all of the things that are maybe out of alignment with what you believe or in your worldview or whatever, it can lead to anger and defensive,ness and insulating from the world and, circling the wagons and putting your dukes up and remember the Alamo and, right? Right? Yeah, these people? You've seen people who are following Jesus and it's like they're always ready for a fight? Right? You know what I'm talking about? Right? Where it just puts you on the defensive because you're trying to protect what you believe, but then it comes across in a hostile way. And then the other extreme, which I would argue, if we're just being honest from a experiential standpoint, most people that are, especially like in this church, in our area where we call home, land on the compromise side. We just want to love everybody, and it leads to kind of undercover passivity. Like, I've got my own beliefs, but you got your own beliefs, and you do you, man. And like, I'm not, you're not hurting anybody, and so it's just like I'm just trying to follow Jesus over here, and like, don't ask me those hard questions, right? And so I think a lot of people fall between these two extremes, and you probably feel maybe this tension, and that's okay. Like, I'm not here to throw rocks. I'm just trying to name, I think, the place that we get to call home. What I would like to present to you today and for the rest of this series is not the extreme of responding out of fear, not the extreme of responding in compromise, but the way of Jesus. I think Jesus has a middle ground that is beautiful. It is indeed controversial, but it is wildly helpful. And we must be able, as followers of Jesus, to hold this tension together, not only as we walk through this series, but as we live our lives following Jesus. So, Luke chapter 7 today. Jesus, a Pharisee, and a prostitute walk into a bar. That's where we are, okay? Let's go to the text. And this is just one case study of many, okay? So you can, without put away your pair of scissors, go to the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you will see this rhythm in the life of Jesus over and over again. This is who he is. Verse 36. One of the Pharisees, it's the religious elite of the day, right? They got all their ducks in a row. They're practicing, right? They're doing the good stuff. They're not hurting anybody, all that stuff. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And then a woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. And she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. She stood behind him at his feet, weeping. She began to wet his feet with her tears, and then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Let's pause here for just a moment. I'm at a pastor's gathering this last week. A lot of the churches and pastors here in the area, we get together often to pray over you, to pray over our city, to pray for one another. And we're at this like pastor's gathering. We're all eating lunch, and in the middle of lunch, a prostitute walks in. And she starts performing in the middle of lunch, and it gets real awkward really quick. Does that make you feel weird? It's weird for me to say that out loud. It didn't really happen. But that kind of what the heck, that is what's happening here, okay? So in the Greek, they're like using soft language. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life, she's a prostitute, okay? Her living is prostitution. And you'll see in response what happens in the text, okay? But I want you to imagine, like this is as controversial as it gets. Simon the Pharisee is watching this, and his mind is boggled. What is happening? How does she know you? What is she doing? Why are you letting her touch you? Good questions. Would you agree? Right? For Jesus, the rabbi, this man of God, and all of a sudden you have this prostitute who's weeping over his feet and wiping it with her hair and pouring out a bottle of perfume. This is a controversial moment. And Luke is giving us a story I want you to lean into. In this story, to start out, there are two people who are very interested in the person of Jesus. Do you see it? Two people. The Pharisee, Simon, we'll see in a moment, he invites Jesus into his home. We know of only one other Pharisee that engages with Jesus. Everyone else keeps their distance from him. They have rocks to throw at him, literally and verbally. And so Nicodemus comes at night to talk to Jesus. He's a Pharisee so that he's not seen by others because he's very interested in Jesus, but he doesn't want to compromise his reputation. And so for this individual, Simon, to invite Jesus into his home, which is a big deal. This is a wild statement of relationship. To be welcome at a table in the first century is declaring relationship. So this is a big deal. This is a religious elite person, but he's looking at Jesus and he is compelled. The person and the work of Jesus, the miracles, the statements, the teachings. Who is this man? And he invites him into it. He's interested. Do you see it? And then there's this woman who comes in off the streets, clearly having heard about Jesus, his person, his work, his teachings, all of those things. Two people very interested in Jesus. What you're also going to see from Luke's story here is that there are also two people who have very different understandings of themselves and very different perceptions of Jesus. So two people interested, but also two sets of understandings, and Luke is going to show us that. And then lastly, he's going to end the story with two responses from Jesus as a result, okay? So let's go on to verse 39. Watch what happens. When the Pharisee, this is Simon, who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this, internal dialogue, you see it? He said to himself, not out loud, very cerebral, very intellectual, very condemning, very judgmental internally, keeping it together on the outside. If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. Do you hear the condemnation? Simon has a perception of holiness as distancing yourself from sin. Do you see it? The further you can get away from sin, the more holy you are. That's Simon's perception of what it means to be in right relationship with God. Jesus answers him, which is wild because he didn't say anything out loud. Okay? So watch out, okay? Jesus, man. Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher. Mistake number one, right? Should have avoided this one, right? Like he's set up. I got something for you. Okay, let's hear it. And he goes on. Two people owed money to a certain money lender. He said, tell him a story, a parable to demonstrate a deep truth. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back. So he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? So pause for a second. Again, there's two understandings here. Simon, he's cerebral, he's intellectual in his approach. The idea is he's coming at Jesus and he's very interested in Jesus, but he's got a set of qualifications. He's got conditions that Jesus has to meet in order for him to get the stamp of approval that you can be God. So yeah, Jesus, I like you, but I got my pair of scissors out and we're gonna work around. You gotta this and don't touch that. And as long as you fit into this box, as long as you don't say those things and do these things, does that make sense? So he's coming to Jesus with a ton of conditions. And then the woman comes with a personal approach. No conditions. One very simple reality. If Jesus is who he says he is, it changes everything. If Jesus is who he says he is. So she has this alabaster flask. This is a little like vial with a long skinny neck that would be filled with perfume. The neck would be so skinny, in fact, that you couldn't actually pour out the ointment, okay? And so this would be something only the wealthy could afford. You would wear it around your neck, that women would around their neck, and it would be a sign of privilege. It'd also be perfume. It makes a woman desirable, things like that. So you have these ideas of a necklace with an alabaster jar around your neck. And you'd either have a lot of money to have one, or if you were a prostitute, this is one way that you got others' attention. Does that make sense? Also, if you're a prostitute, this is probably the most valuable thing that she has. This is her industry. This is her livelihood. And again, it's such a narrow neck, you can smell it, but you can't pour it out. And so what does she do? She comes to Jesus' feet before she even does anything. She clearly had the intention of this, but she's so overwhelmed with who Jesus is, she begins weeping before she does anything. with her tears on his feet, she wipes his hair, she breaks the flask. Why? It's the only way to get the ointment out, right? And she pours it on his feet. And it is a wild declaration. It's not just generosity. It's a wild declaration. Jesus, if you are who you say you are, then I give you everything. My entire life. This is her livelihood, that she is banking on Jesus, that he can undo in her life what she cannot undo herself. So you have Simon, intellectual approach, distance, kind of paying attention, weighing his odds, fact-checking. And then you have a woman who has come face to face with Jesus, heard his teachings, heard about his grace, his power, his ability to forgive, and then she comes just overwhelmed with that reality. If Jesus is who he says he is, then it changes everything. Now, the parable. 2 people owe money. Now, this is Jesus trying to, again, 2 different understandings of what's going on here. This is Jesus trying to connect the dots. 2 people owe money. One, a larger debt, one, a smaller debt. 500 denarii, 50. You're like $500,000 and $500. Okay? 500,000, 500. Neither of them had the money to pay him back. So the moneylender forgives the debt of both. And Jesus' question is, which of them will love him more? Now, this is brilliant. 2 people are in debt. Neither can pay the moneylender back. So, if you're in debt in this first century culture, and you can't pay your debt, whether it's $500,000 or $5,000, you're going to jail. You're losing everything. In the same culture, right? Whether you're in debt up to your eyeballs or a little bit of debt, if you don't have the means to pay your debt, then there's consequence. Would you agree? Here's Jesus' point. It doesn't matter how much debt you think you're in. Your perception of the debt is not the reality, because if you can't pay your debt, then you're still in trouble. It doesn't matter how much debt you have. If you have nothing to pay, you're in trouble. So this is Jesus making a statement. Everyone is in debt because of their sin. Everyone is in debt and cannot pay their own way. Tim Keller says it this way. He says, if a poisonous spider sneaks into your room at night and bites you in your sleep and you die in your sleep, which I did not need that mental image, you're welcome. Or a lion sneaks into your bedroom like it does in the middle of the night and mauls you to death, which of those 2 people are more dead? They're both pretty dead, right? Spider bite, mauling by a lion, you're both pretty dead. 50 denarii, 500 denarii. Like, the debt is the debt. Does that make sense? Like, dead is dead. That's the idea. And so Simon is the 50, and the woman is the 500. Does this make sense to you? Jesus is building a picture. There's 2 kinds of people in this story. Jesus is building a picture. And Simon, he's moral, he's respectable, he's religious, he's spiritually interested, he's seeking, but he's coming to Jesus not with an understanding of his debt that's detrimental, but rather with an understanding of his debt that he can take care of. He's going to Jesus saying, show me the way. Like, I can do it. I got a little bit of debt, but like, you show me the way and I can take care of this. I can climb my way out of this hole. I can follow the way in such a way that everything's going to line up and I'm going to be good with God. I can do it. Just show me the way. And the woman is so far into debt, so broken, has had a hard life. There's no hope in and of herself. There's no pride. There's no, I can take care of this. She is just overwhelmed with, I'm stuck here unless someone else does something to intervene. Now, what you need to understand around conversations around sin, and you might not like that language, just hang on for a minute. Sin is bigger than just breaking the rules, okay? Sin, at its core, is this. There's a God, and you're not him. That's it. At its core, the issue of sin is there is a God, and you and I are not him. And so then what's going on? Religious people, they try to be God by following all the rules. And non-religious people try to be God by doing their own thing and finding their own fulfillment. Either way, everyone's trying to be their own God, trying to be in control, trying to have this self-salvation project, if you will, trying to do it their own way. And then salvation for Jesus in this conversation is represented very clearly as a forgiveness of debt. Do you see it? This is not like kind of taking the edge off your bad feelings and making you feel a little better about last weekend's decisions. No, Jesus is describing sin as a debt that needs to be forgiven, and salvation is the wiping of that debt, the forgiveness of a debt. And Jesus is making it clear, Simon and the woman, you both have a debt and you can't pay it. But here's what's amazing. Jesus says, I am willing to pay it. The forgiveness of a debt is never free. It always costs someone something, right? So if the debt is wiped out for the two individuals, the moneylender is eating that debt. It is not free. It is not like, your student loans just got obliterated into the $1 trillion debt that we owe in the U.S., right? That's not it. Forgiveness costs someone something. And Jesus says, I am willing. Now, I want you to understand, there are two sets of awarenesses in this passage. The woman has an awareness of her debt and the concept of the cost that it takes to cover it. And Simon has no awareness of his debt. Listen, friends, every religion on the planet agrees that things are jacked up. And probably no matter where you are on the spectrum of Jesus and religion and all that, you don't have to look very far around you and inside of you to agree that things are jacked up. And if I'm honest enough, I'm pretty jacked up. And the closer I get to people, they're pretty jacked up too. Most people agree that we are part of the problem in the jacked upness of the world. That there is a debt to be owed. There is this brokenness that needs to be handled. What you need to understand is that Jesus is not a God wagging his finger at the debt that you owe. Jesus is not looking down his nose saying, you better straighten up and get it together, or it's no harps and wings and floaty clouds for you. That's a joke. That's not what you're going to. That's not what Jesus has on offer. Jesus is the only one, in fact, the only one out of every world religion on the planet to look at my debt and to look at your debt with compassion and pay the price himself. The only one to be filled with enough love to say, I see your cost and I will take it on myself. You see, friends, if you and I don't have a concept of what God has paid on our behalf, we will struggle to be moved by his love. We will struggle to follow him if we don't have a concept of both our great debt and his great compassion and love. Simon has no concept. He does not see his need, nor does he see the price that Jesus is willing to pay. Now watch how it ends, verse 43. Simon replies, I suppose, in response to this story, the one who has the bigger debt forgiven is the one that's more grateful. Jesus says, yeah, kind of makes sense. The bigger the debt, the more gratitude. So the woman walks in with a wild awareness of her debtedness, if you will, of her brokenness, of her unfixableness. And Jesus, who is willing to step in the gap and to forgive her sin. And she's standing there weeping, yes, over the brokenness of her life, but also over the magnitude of the cost that he is willing to pay to have her. Simon has no concept of his debt nor the cost. Jesus turns toward the woman and he says to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You didn't give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. What is Jesus saying? Simon, you invited me in, but you kept me at an intellectual distance, weighing all the facts. And this woman has made it personal from the beginning. And if it's not personal, it's not going to work. It's not going to be real. And Jesus says, do you see her? And the answer is no. No, he doesn't see her. Maybe physically she's right there, but no, you can't see her. And honestly, the tragic part of the story is Simon can't see her and the dignity wrapped up in the woman made in God's image. He can't see himself. And the most tragic reality is he can't see Jesus right in front of him. Jesus says, I see her. All of the brokenness and all the beauty wrapped up into this moment. I see her. And Jesus is saying, Simon, I see you. I see you both. Jesus would say to you, friends, this morning, I see you. All of you. The beautiful parts, the broken parts, the hidden parts, the prideful parts, the parts trying to earn your own self-worth, and the parts so far gone you think you could never even be forgiven. But unlike the Pharisees who are filled with condemnation when they see others, Jesus is filled with compassion for both of them. You see, it's easy to read this moment and say, oh yeah, go Jesus. Man, I hate those Pharisee guys. Man, they're all like uptight and religious and condemning. Like Jesus is all about like this sexually liberating this woman, letting her like authentic self come out. Like, yeah, Jesus. Right? That's not what's happening. She is in tears because of who Jesus is, but also because she hates her life and she wants a new one. And Jesus is the only one that can give it to her. She is in a profession where the only value that she has been told she carries is in her body as a commodity to be used by others. And here she is sitting at the feet of Jesus, who declares her valuable and beautiful and has the ability to set her free. It's personal for the woman. Do you see it? It's personal. Jesus is for me. And Simon is, who are you, Jesus? Now watch, verse 47. Therefore, Jesus says, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. You don't miss this. Her sins have been forgiven. Many sins, okay? So Jesus is not softening the blow. Outright, he calls her a sinner. He's not like, looking the other way and pretending like she doesn't have a broken life. He knows exactly who this woman is and where she's been and what she's done and what she represents. And he says, her many sins have been forgiven as her great love has shown. So this moment of weeping in the bottle of perfume, and like she's not earning God's love and forgiveness in this moment. Do you see it? All of the weeping, all of the crying, all of the tears, the wiping of his feet with her hair, the breaking of the perfume. What is that? That's in response to his love. Because he has loved her, she is overwhelmed and giving it all. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus turns and says to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests begin to say among themselves, who is this, Jesus, who even forgives sins? And Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. There's the key. Not your bottle of perfume, not your tears, your faith, your trust in my character, in my life, in my death, in my resurrection. Your trust in me is what's saving you. Go in peace. A better translation, it sounds like, congratulations, pat on the head, get out of here. A better translation is go into peace. As in continue to live according to the reality that you have just stepped into. It's not an invitation to go back to the lifestyle that she has been in. It is a clear invitation into something better and more. Friends, what I want you to notice is that Jesus treats this woman with dignity, calls her a sinner, and forgives her all in the same breath. He does not condone her behavior. He doesn't say, you do you, boo, it's going to be all okay. He calls out her sexual immorality and her effort to be her own God and establish her own significance and to save herself, and he calls her into new life. This is grace. Jesus saves you out of sin and then teaches you to live from a place of forgiveness and love, a new life. Friends, I want you to notice Jesus' theology does not shift in this moment. Sin is still the problem, and it has vertical and horizontal issues. It is breaking down relationships left and right, and it is separating you from God. Sin brings death. It robs you of life. It destroys God's image in the individual and God's design in relationship and community and in the world. There is a debt. Jesus is not overlooking it or turning away from it or ignoring it. In fact, this debt must be paid, and he will ultimately pay it. He doesn't sidestep the cross. This coming weekend, Jesus goes all the way to the cross because of Simon's debt, because of this woman's debt, because of my debt, and because of yours. But it doesn't stop there. It is to declare the love and the power and the forgiveness and the grace of God available to anyone who would trust in this person, Jesus. What we see in the person of Jesus, friends, is simple and it is life-shattering. Between fear, between compromise, we see Jesus full of compassion and conviction. Radical compassion, unwavering conviction John 1 describes Jesus stepping onto the scenes of humanity full of grace and truth. Two things that a lot of people treat as competing against one another, and Jesus holds them together beautifully in a messy reality of controversy. And that's the invitation for you and I. Jesus comes at your life full of compassion. That word compassion, every time you see it in the text in the Greek, it's like this guttural word. It means to be moved in the bowels. We see Jesus consistently moved with compassion over your life and over my life and over the lives of others. The brokenness of sin and the pain of death. And he's moved with compassion. And that compassion is going to move him all the way to the cross to pay the debt, to forgive. Whether you consider your debt to be just 50 or 5,000, you can't pay it. But Jesus is willing to. Now it's important, friends, that we hold this tension for the rest of the series. We're going to talk about some hard stuff. We're going to talk about some stuff that really matters. We're going to talk about some stuff that is life-defining for people to your left and your right that do not follow Jesus, that do not believe in him, but that he loves deeply and that we are called to as well. Defining things for you in this room. Lots of scar tissue. Lots of what ifs. Lots of challenge. And if we cannot hold compassion and conviction together, it's really easy to start to look like Simon. To think to yourself, I would never. The issue with Simon is he can't see his debt. Because as soon as you can see your debt, it cultivates a humility where you don't look down your nose at other people. You look at them with compassion and love. The people most in alignment with Jesus while he walked the earth, the people most in alignment with his ethics, I should say, were the Pharisees. They were also the people most offended by him. The people drawn most consistently to Jesus were usually those people also living most clearly out of alignment with his ethics, i.e., this woman. So Jesus gives a very clear teaching on adultery being a sin, something that's broken down in relationship between you and God and you and your neighbor. Jesus' teaching on adultery goes all the way to the heart. And here is this woman walking in the room who makes a living off of lust. You see it? How is it that people who are the furthest away from living like Jesus are most drawn to him, and the people that have their ducks in a row and are the most shiny on the outside are so wildly offended by him? By the way, it's not just sexuality, right? Jesus' teachings on greed go right to the heart. And then we see tax collectors who literally make a living off of robbing others drawn to Jesus. Is that strange to you? Jesus held compassion and conviction together. And I would like to give you some language for the rest of the series as we walk through some hard things. There is a difference between acceptance and agreement. There is a difference in the way of Jesus. Now listen, our culture disagrees with this, by the way. But there is a difference between acceptance and agreement. Our culture would say, if you don't agree with my worldview, my lifestyle, and my behavior, then you don't accept me. That's the conclusion. But for Jesus, he looks at this woman and says, I can accept you, show you love, treat you with dignity, and disagree with your lifestyle and call you into something better. And that is controversial. He does it for Simon. He does it for the woman. He does it for me. And he will do it for you. To follow Jesus is to invite controversy into your life. Friends, if you're not actively experiencing controversy in your life, then I'd like to pose a very simple question. Where have you taken the scissors? And what parts of the Bible have you cut out? In your heart and your mind? If you're not experiencing controversy, there's a really good chance there's some things that you're rearranging and trying to avoid in order to live a peaceful life. But if Jesus is who he said he is, and he can do what he said he would do, then he's not only trustworthy, but everything he invites us into, commands us to live into, reveals about himself and God and ourselves, is going to bring the most radical freedom you could possibly imagine, is going to bring more life than you could possibly get your hands on your own, and is going to shatter the worldviews to your left and your right. So I got a couple of next steps for you. To follow this wonderful, controversial Jesus, to hold compassion and conviction together well, you must first experience his radical compassion and unwavering conviction for you. There's no version of holding these tensions together well in a world out there if I have not first embraced them in my own life. Not like Simon, in an intellectual, cerebral, distanced way, but like the woman, personally. And so my encouragement for you today is, number one, to receive the love of God. Friends, if you have never encountered the compassion and the love of God, the forgiveness that Jesus has offered, to forgive your debt, to forgive your sin, to make you new, to bring you back into right relationship with God, to fill you with new life, and then to help restore your life now and forever. If you have never encountered that love, it is for you today. And you cannot offer to others what you have not experienced yourself. Because it doesn't make sense. Simon thinks he can do it on his own. I can hold this thing together. I can live a good life. I can hit all of my goals and stay in alignment with my own values and find fulfillment and destiny or whatever else he's after, until he can't. Jesus is saying there's a debt in your life you cannot pay on your own. But I'm willing to pay it if you let me. Jesus has waded right into the middle of our mess, paid our debt, offering forgiveness and new life to anyone who would trust in him. Now, friends, listen. The more you acknowledge your debt, the more you acknowledge his grace, the more you will live into this freedom. It's why Good Friday is so important to the Easter events of the weekend. We come together on the events of the evening when Jesus goes to the cross to remember the magnitude of my debt and the magnitude of his love. I've had a lot of friends talking to me about trying to practice the way of Jesus and just being discouraged. Like getting beat up, feeling powerless, like I can't do this right, I can't do this right. I'm struggling in this area with sin, and I'm struggling over here, and I'm struggling to this and that. And then people are just getting beat up from all sides. Listen, friends, if you're struggling to love life, if you're struggling like with sin and all of its variety, if you're struggling to love others, if you're struggling to open up to God's love, I would invite you and argue that the key to kind of breaking through those things is holding together the magnitude of your debt and the magnitude of his love, of his costly love for you at the same time. Jesus paid a debt I cannot pay. And it was far more costly than I can possibly get my hands on, like wrap my mind around. If I can hold those two things together, it fills me with humility. I'm not earning my way anywhere in this thing, but it also fills me with gratitude that God would love me anyway. So if you feel stuck, maybe the helpful reminder here is just that grace is not free, but it is freeing. To receive the love of God maybe for the first time, or for some of you, to remember the love of God. If you're a follower of Jesus and you're struggling, maybe you just forgot the size of your debt. Maybe you forgot the magnitude of the price that he paid. Maybe all you need to do is go back to the cross and see Jesus' hands and arms stretched wide, nails in his hands and his feet. Yes, paying your debt, but also as a declaration of his love for you. Maybe all you need is that moment to realize that some of the stuff that you're struggling with, some of the stuff that's beating you up, the thoughts and the behaviors and the patterns and all, like some of that is just so far beneath the love and the passion that you can have for God. Remember the love that God has for you. And then live into it. Friends, listen, there's a reason that Alcoholics Anonymous is so powerfully helpful for people. There's a reason that it works. Do you know why? Well, number one, they acknowledge that there's a higher power. There is a God, and guess what? It's not you. Number one. But then guess what? Second thing is identity. Hi, I'm Drake, and I'm a narcissist. I struggle with sexual addiction. I'm incredibly prideful. I'm really greedy. I have a short temper. I'm impatient. I'm self-absorbed. Fill in the blanks. Confession. It's a requirement. I know so many people who have been freed from alcoholism. You know why? It's to get in an environment where they realize they can't do it themselves. And then they confess openly and honestly that they are totally jacked up and they have a debt that they can't handle on their own. And then you know what they find? Accountability. They don't do it on their own. They come back every week to a group of people committed to them and committed to their sobriety. And so it's not enough to just get good feelings in your heart that God loves you and you're in debt and yeah, you're going to do better by the time midnight rolls around tonight. No, you got to confess that stuff. Don't let the devil beat you up in the dark. Get it out in the light where people who love you and a God who loves you, and you'll find freedom. And you join a city group and you be honest and you get your stuff out there, and those people step in and they see you. Like Jesus, not like Simon, like Jesus. And you begin to find freedom through accountability, through grace, through confession, through identity, through a reshaping of your worldview. Do you see it? The last thing is the fast. 5 days of fasting and prayer. Fast, pray, and here's my invitation. Drag the reality of God's love into your daily life. The practice of fasting. What am I doing? Giving up lunch, social media, alcohol, sugary drinks, whatever, caffeine, that's rough. Giving up something to create a hunger in me because I know I need God more than anything else. And I'm just trying to remind myself of that every day. And every time that hunger pain comes up, what if every time that hunger pain comes up, oh God, I'm so needy. Oh God, you are so present. You are so good. You're so full of power and life and forgiveness. Fill me. Remind me who I am and who you are and who other people are to you. What if instead of Thomas Jefferson, instead of cutting up the scriptures, the next 5 days you let the Spirit use the scriptures to cut you up? To do the good kind of work, to cut away the stuff that is dragging you down, that feels heavy on your chest and your heart and your mind, that's destroying you from the inside out. What if you let the Holy Spirit work alongside you to cut away those things and to breathe new life into you? That's the practice of fasting. And as you become overwhelmed with the reality of God's great goodness and His love for you, and the reality of the costliness of your own debt, guess what happens? You can't help but look at other people the same way. Every person you lock eyes with in incredible need, but also incredibly loved. So no judgment, no condemnation, compassion and conviction. You see it? If we don't start here, the rest of the series will be a train wreck. Receive the compassion and the conviction of Jesus today, and let's learn to live from it together, okay? Can I pray for you? God, thank you for this church. Thank you for Jesus, the flesh and bones, living expression of God for us. God in the flesh, God with us. That you stepped out of heaven into our mess and created all kinds of controversy. And you don't fit nice and neatly into our worldview, our thought patterns, the things that we're comfortable with, the areas that we want you to stay in. But God, maybe for the first time we're realizing that maybe we don't want to keep you contained. That if you are who you say you are, if you can actually do what you said that you would do, you can forgive sin, you can give new life, then maybe we kind of want to invite you into every room of our lives. Maybe we'd like to invite disruption. Maybe controversy is exactly what we need to disrupt our comfortability and our biases and our pride and our judgment and our doubt and our depression and our anxiety. Jesus, would you come now? Holy Spirit, come and disrupt all the things that keep us comfortable and that keep us from you. And help us encounter fresh and new the weight of the debt that we owe and the magnitude of your love for us today. Amen.